Hello, everyone, and welcome to the OnlyLandFans show. My name is Kendall Lejeune, and our guest today is Daniel Apke. Daniel Apke's journey in real estate and business began post-graduation, leading him from internships to launching his own ventures. He's the mastermind behind the successful Urban Bikes Direct, co-founder of Apke Land, and the driving force behind landinvestingonline.com, a platform teaching the art of profitable land flipping. Beyond founding and selling a retail company, Daniel has immersed himself in the real estate world, gaining insights as a territory sales manager and now as the CEO of a land trading firm. He also co-hosts the Real Estate Investing podcast and runs various online businesses, offering valuable advice in the realms of investment and real estate. Daniel, thanks so much for joining us. How are you today?
I'm doing great, man. Excited to be here. And yeah, that introduction hit it on spot, man.
Awesome. We're so excited to have you. I've been wanting to have you on the show for quite some time now. Glad that our books have finally been able to sync up together and get you on the show. So let's jump right in. How did you get started in doing land deals?
So I graduated college and I got into real estate right away. The first thing I did was buy a commercial property. It was a small little $82,000 salon, and I still own that today. But that opened my eyes up to real estate in general. As we know, as anyone in real estate knows, it can be from traditional rental properties, it can be very difficult to quit your job from it, get enough cash flow to quit your job. So I was looking for things to quit my job. I ended up going down a different route than land at first. I was in the e-commerce world. I built up Urban Bikes Direct, a company, and multiple others, ended up liquidating those and selling them to an investment group out in California. And along that path, two of my mentors in that space, Joe and Mike Brusca, introduced me to land, the profitability of it. I got started, hit the ground running full force. Me and my brother was a basketball coach at the time, and I was working a 9 to 5, driving around in sales from customer to customer. And I fell in love with the profitability and the opportunity, the low competition in the space. And just, I saw how early in the stages it was. And we just dove in full force from there.
Very cool. So your foray into land was through buying another business. Can you talk a little bit about how you went from that salon into real estate and how that kind of developed for you?
Yeah, so I throughout that whole journey in general, I was buying different real estate and rental properties, and I still own a portfolio of them today. That I look as a whole different pillar. That's just long-term investments. It's doing a little bit of cash flow, yeah, but it's not doing anything crazy it's just long-term investment for me. The land space in general, I saw that as a way to pay my bills plus more and live a very, like, everything revolved around freedom. I wanted to work for myself. I wanted to never work for anyone again. I wanted to make a lot of money. I wanted to travel, do whatever I want. I ended up moving from Ohio to Florida. And it was all around the word and just the lifestyle of freedom. And that's why I fell in love with land in general, just the heavy cash flow, the high profit per deal. I was in the e-commerce space selling electric bikes. So it was considered high ticket. We're not selling 100, 200, $500,000 properties with or electric bikes. It was seeing the potential to make 6 figures of profit per deal was really appealing to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I've talked to a lot of people about that very same thing, is that land is very unique in the fact that it's a great way to get huge cash injections, like some
Exactly.
serious cash, right? And so I see a lot of people that are getting cash and they're investing in other opportunities. So it sounds like that's exactly what you were doing. When you are doing these land deals and you started getting into, you mentioned commercial property, did you have any types of, you mentioned some mentors. How did you learn about land? How did you go about, did you have mentors, coaches, courses? How did you approach that?
Yeah, both. I've bought tons of courses. I buy courses still today of all kinds of different things. We just bought one. I have a full-time analytics guy who just bought a Power BI course to improve some of our analytics. We buy courses all the time. And earlier this year, I bought a stretching course because I'm very tight and I need to work on my mobility. At first, so my mentors in my e-commerce bikes company were Joe and Mike Brusco. They got into land and hit it full force as well, and they were showing me about it. They had a little bit different of a methodology than what we ended up going, but it showed me the route, showed me buying under market value, and then all the opportunities after that. So Joe and Mike were the first people that introduced me to it, showed me that. And from there, I got addicted like anyone else to YouTube. And then we started just mass sending out mail. Our first month in, we sent over 10,000 mailers. We were obsessed with the direct mail. We didn't get any results for a long time. We tweaked our style and our business model a little bit and just kept evolving from there.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So you just mentioned you didn't get any results for a long time.
No.
Sending out direct mail is not cheap, right? So you sent out all of this mail, didn't really get a whole lot of results. What made you keep going and say, you know what, I'm gonna stick with it?
Having other businesses experience, I knew that it just takes time. Like my first 6 months in business for my first business ever, which was the electric bike company, and my first real operation was rough. Like credit card companies shut me down. I couldn't even process payments at one point, couldn't buy inventory. It was a mess. And I was like, if I could escape that, like that, it's an uphill battle at first. It always is in a new business. There's a huge learning curve. You don't know what you don't know. You're going to get smacked in the face a couple of times. It's just how it is. And I knew that as if other people are doing this, why not me? And I just had that, I just knew it would work the whole time and I was going to give it a hard shot if not.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that a lot of people see in mainstream right now where it's, yeah, get rich overnight and just flip a few funnels on and like
Yeah.
now you're a millionaire. I think that's a really good point that you make, though. Embrace the fact that there's going to be a learning curve. Like it's not going to be easy for any business, right? So I think that's really important.
Especially if you have a 9 to 5 and family. And I didn't have a family at the time. Life is busy. So I was waking up at 5:30, not every day, but I was waking up at 5:30, 5 a.m., sometimes earlier than that. And I would be so tired and I would have to go to my 9 to 5, but I would just flip open my laptop in bed and try to move the needle forward every time. There's so many different distractions in life. You just got to move a tiny bit every single day and stay consistent. And those little jabs build up over time. And if you look back 6 months later and wow, look how far I've come. And it's just about moving forward. You don't need to take any crazy leaps.
That's really good. That's really good. You don't have to do the whole thing all at once. Rome
Right.
wasn't built in a day, all that good stuff, but just keep being consistent. That's great advice. So, what types of land deals do you currently specialize in now?
Mainly flipping. Our average profit's about $25,000, $30,000 per deal. We're trying to significantly increase that. We're doing more six-figure deals than we've ever done. We really like the subdivide play when they come. Our acquisition strategies changed quite a bit the last 12 months, and we can talk about that as well. But we're going like big deals. We want six-figure deals and high six-figure deals. And we haven't had any deals over $1 million yet. That's where we want to go in terms of just purchasing and doing some minor subdivides, things like that. But yeah, we're attacking our average purchase now is probably around 50,000. It's trending up. I would like to see that around 90, $110,000 or so. But for the most part, we're just buying and flipping it on the market. We do some other stuff, and I own some land for long-term hold as well, just for another investment. And I'm from Cincinnati, so I want to buy some land around there and hold it for long term. But our main business model is just buying and flipping as fast as possible.
Really good. So, you mentioned that there were some learning curves when you were just getting started. You had other experience in other business ventures. What were some of the biggest challenges in doing your very first land deal? Hey, land fans! Looking for your tribe of serious land investors? Join thousands of your fellow land lovers in the Only Land Fans Facebook group. We're talking real deals, expert strategies, and game changing connections you won't find anywhere else. This isn't just another real estate group, this is the community where land investors come to level up. Join us at OnlyLandFansGroup.com and join the conversation today. That's OnlyLandFansGroup.com. See you there.
Just not understanding how the process works. You want to lock it up as soon as possible. And that was foreign to me. I'm like, oh, lock this up when I don't know anything about the land. That was a little bit foreign to me. Title is very foreign to someone not in real estate really at all. I had rental properties, but you don't need to deal with the title like yourself when you have a realtor and all that stuff. But we sell almost all our properties without using a realtor. So talking to sellers, directing them there, all that, the minor stuff that happens in between that you don't really think of at first was the biggest learning curve. And then we fight title a lot now in terms of they'll come back with little things in their title insurance. We don't know anything. I didn't know how to read title insurance. I didn't know how to do any of that at the time. So it's just a bunch of little things everywhere, I think.
Yeah, that's death by a thousand cuts, right? Like
Yeah,
just not knowing what you don't know.
exactly.
Yeah, that's really good insight. So, are you currently raising money for deals, or how do you go about funding? Is it all self-funded, or talk to us about that?
We were self-funding a lot. And then I looked and I was like, I was talking to my brother and I was like, Ron, we have millions of dollars in capital tied up to these deals. And we're just like, I believe in land. I love it, but I don't want all my money tied up in land anymore. And from there, we're like, all right, let's start raising money. And we started raising friends and family. Essentially, we used a ton of friends just from people I knew back from Cincinnati, essentially, and I would ask them if they knew anyone who's interested. I would pitch it to them. And then we started raising money. It's pretty much we'll put a mortgage and a promissory note on the land in return for they get a guaranteed return based on that. And we pay it out when it sells.
Excellent. So what types of returns would you expect to be able to pitch to the people that are investing in your deals?
We would do like at first, the easiest money for us to get was 15% no matter what. So that's how we started it. We'll give you a 15% return on your money when it sells, no matter when it sells. And then we were turning these properties in a month, sometimes 3 weeks, 2 weeks, but sometimes 4 months, 5 months. The longest we would allow it to go is 8 months, and that's when it would cap, and they get a 15% return at 8 months. Obviously, that for passive investors that aren't doing any work, that's very appealing to them, and people kept coming for more and more. And then just recently, in the last 12 months or so, we're starting to switch that and getting more favorable rates on our side from people who essentially just people who have money and just want it to work a little bit and don't want to be involved at all. They're just looking for 15 to 20% annual returns.
Yeah. So if someone's listening to this and they say, I'm having that exact same problem, I feel like a huge bottleneck in my business is like all my capital's in deals. I need to start raising money. What are some rules of thumb and some tools that you've realized that would be super beneficial for someone that's brand new looking to start raising money for these deals?
You want some deals under your belt. It can't, you're taking a mortgage and a promissory note out. So you want to manage the risk essentially. You don't want to throw all your deals into one bucket. Use some traditional deal funding and profit splits because that's zero risk on you. There's something there. I know it's more expensive, but it's there for a reason. You don't need to get a mortgage out. You don't need to have any history necessarily. You want and build relationships and build your portfolio so you can go confidently to investors and like for me to go to an investor now and guarantee him 15% in 8, 12 months, I feel so confident I'm going to pay that back. I've experience and history under my belt. So don't think too short term. Think long term and build relationships because they'll come back for more. And then in the end, you'll end up saving money and just having a really good synergetic relationship.
That's really fantastic. Really good advice. Now, you mentioned that you had an e-commerce background. Can you talk a little bit about what are some of the skills that you had in that e-commerce business that translated really well to land?
It's a good question. I've never really thought of that. I'm sure there's something there. Just understanding how business, like the first thing that I learned ever was understanding it's not going to come right away. And that's like the first, you think when you have the naive, like you're pretty naive when you start a business to think a lot of people think it's going to start clicking and working right away. That's not the reality. So going in, I think the mindset is what helped me the most of just knowing how business works. The other thing is outsourcing. I was able to build up that company and outsource completely almost everything besides a couple of tasks that I had to do, a couple of roles that I had to do at higher level. But I think outsourcing in general and managing. For the electric bikes, I outsourced everything in the Philippines. I still outsource some in the Philippines. I do have majority of my employees now are US based actually, but I do still hire some in the Philippines for certain roles as well. But I think in general, just the operations behind running the businesses and outsourcing the businesses and just managing the employees there. But land is so much different than that. Like for every bike I had to sell, I had to have another employees. For every 100 bikes I sold, I needed another customer support, technical support, salesperson to sell them, all of that stuff. Land's unique to where I got in, I was like, it's me, my brother, a transaction coordinator, and a virtual assistant. And we were doing 5, 6, $7 million a year top line and doing $3 million a year gross with such few people. And I was like, it was just a different game. I wasn't used to being able to run that high level of a profitable business with such low overhead.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think that's one of the things that so many people love about land is that you don't have to have these like massive teams to
Right.
really do some incredible stuff, right? Like leverage is just incredible when it comes to the your labor. It's crazy, right?
Yeah, you can do a lot, just a few people. And that's why I really love that business. You don't need to work. If you're doing direct mail too, you don't need to work. If you're doing it on the side, it is the best thing for doing on the side. You just don't need to. My brother today, I was on a call with him. I have two brothers, one I'm in business with, one that does land himself. And I was on a call with the other one who I'm not in business with. And he's like, how much money do you think I can make next year going full time? Because he's an engineer now. He has two kids. and he's still making $400,000 a year, I think, off doing it very part-time. And I was like, the thing with land, if you're not very aggressive on the acquisitions and texting and having, you're going to get bored at times. It comes in spurts from my experience. And it's like doing it full-time is great, but there are times where it comes in waves. You might have $300,000 of profit this month and then nothing next month. And that's just how the land business works, especially if you're using direct mail.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think that I've always heard it explained that's one of the negative components of the land business that it is very like up and down. But if you're part-time, like that could totally be a benefit. So can you talk a little bit about if someone is looking to do land part-time, what are the expectations that they should have for their business, and how can they do some serious, significant business part-time?
Yeah. The first thing is moving forward every single day. Expectation wise, depends how fast you want to run. You can send direct, you could start your business and send mail this week and maybe have a deal by 2, 3, 4 weeks from now, which would be great. And that's best case scenario, but that doesn't always happen. So always expect it to take 6 months to start hitting the ground and getting some deals. If you get anything before 6 months, that's awesome. You have a profitable business before 6 months. I've had coaching members come to me and they're like, I'm month 6. I've sent so much mail. And I break down their numbers. I was like, Steve, you just made $109,000. I know you want to make 500 this year, but this is your first 6 months in business, and just bringing it back down to reality and breaking even by month 6 is a phenomenal thing in any business, I think. So I'd pull back your expectations. It's great if you get a deal before, but give it 6 hard months. Expect a hard grind, expect to get smacked around a little bit, keep moving forward a little bit every day, and in 6 months it should pan out.
Excellent. So if someone's thinking, okay, I think I can do this, I can just buckle down for 6 months. What types of numbers are you seeing in terms of send out this much mail? So for every 5,000 mailers, you get one deal, or what's the ratio that you're seeing currently in the market today?
We get about one per every 2,500 of mail. What we have seen bring that number down extensively if you do some text follow-ups. And there's obviously a lot of people doing cold calling. There's a lot of new strategies being introduced. I like them all. I'm not pro or for or against any. I know they all work. Cold calling's been around for ages, right? So has direct mail. Texting's the most sketchy right now just because of the legalities going on with it. But it has historically worked. Texting follow up to a piece of mail, you send the mail 2 weeks later, they get it. You can bring those numbers significantly down. All depends what your budget is and what your time constraints are. The cheapest thing to do is to pick up the phone and start calling, but that's also the most time intensive, right? I love direct mail. We get one per every 2,500. I'd be completely okay if we got one per 5,000. I'd be completely okay if we got one for 10,000. The numbers make sense. People overanalyze their numbers, especially at first. And it just, until you have a huge sample size out there, you can overanalyze can really hurt you.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So let me ask, what would you say to people that say, man, I've tried mail, I've done it, mail just never works for me, mail is dead? What do you say to those people, and how can those people improve their mail performance?
I can prove to them that it's not dead. Mail works extremely well. I would first ask how much mail they sent out. I would ask, is it a neutral letter, blind offers? What's your strategy? Where are you marketing? A lot of people are marketing in the same areas very heavily. There's a lot of land out there. You fly on over in a plane, look down, you're over Kansas, you're over Iowa, you're over Washington State. There's just so much land out there, and people are so isolated in a few different markets. I really want people to explore the different markets out there because they're less saturated than others. But I would ask them what areas they're marketing. I'd ask them, are they doing direct mail? Are they doing blind offers? A lot of times when people have bad ratios, I start really digging in, and it can be a lot of times it's on their sales and acquisition strategy. They're getting calls. Sometimes they're not calling people back if they don't leave a voicemail. I found someone doing that the other day. Like, these phone calls are very expensive for direct mail. You got to take them seriously. We get 13 calls per every 2,500 mailers, and do the math. It's $150 a call or something like that. Take them very seriously. Sales can take you to the next level in general. So that's always the thing I'll push on someone and start testing, like how they're treating these calls, follow-ups, things like that.
Excellent. So I definitely want to dive into your sales strategy, but before we do that, I would like to start with how do you pick a market to start targeting and start testing that market? What do you look for to say this might be a really good market? And what do you like to see in terms of performance in that market?
So if I'm looking to just get a deal with the least resistance, especially for someone starting out, I love for 5 acres to be between $30 to $70,000 or so. A lot of people come in and pick markets 5 acres out in Vail, Colorado, and it's worth like 250 grand. That means when you're sending your 20 acres, they're going to be worth 600 grand. And that's not the best strategy to get you the deal the quickest. So 5 acres, I love looking at the 5 acre price. I love looking at how fast 5 acre properties are selling. That's like the average size property we'll get back, and making sure those turn in a market is really important. I like to go around metro areas that are desirable, even if they're not desirable, like Memphis, for example. We went around Memphis, and Memphis is a declining city, but there's a lot of areas outside Memphis that people are flocking to because of Memphis, the crime's increasing, school districts are poor, whatever reasons they're flocking away from, they're going to a county removed, 2 counties removed. So we've used local realtors in the area to identify those in Northeast Mississippi to go around there. And there's some really hot areas. We go around metro areas, 1, 2 county removed, typically 3 counties removed. You start getting a little rural, but we'll still do it. But typically we focus around metro areas and hit those outside bordering counties pretty hard.
Excellent. And so how quick do you like to see the turnover for these counties when you're looking at the sell-through rate?
Yeah, if it lands weird because you can have one data point, especially in these counties without as much data, like a lot of rural America is. One data point can really screw up the whole data set. So I dive really deep into individual comps, because if one data point's priced incorrectly, like you and I know, people post land at outrageous prices. Like for sale comps, I'd say 70, 80% of them are way overpriced. Like 5 acres sitting for 300 grand for 2 years type overpriced. So I really like to look at individual comps and dive in. If it's priced right, so I'll find out what I think 5 acres is priced for, 10 acres or whatever range I'm looking at. I'll find out what I think it's worth. Okay, 5 acres for $50,000 in Macon County, Georgia. That's what I think, just from ballparking it, looking at it for 5 minutes. That's what looks to be around the case here. And then I'll start looking at the sold comps, and I'll see, and for sale, and I'll see, okay, is anything priced 5 acres for 50,000 on the market right now, or anywhere near that? Then if I start saying, oh, 5,000 for 40,000, 5,000 for 35, and see some consistency there, I'm going to dive in a little bit. Like, why are all the sold saying 5 for 50, but everything for sale is 40,000, 35,000? And that starts to give me an idea that it's a declining market. And then I'll dive into the sold and see how fast they sold for, what were they listed for, and all of that stuff. So if it's priced correctly, I like to see it sold within, or pending within 21 days or so. That's usually a good mark. 30 days, usually the max. But if it's priced correctly and it's 5 acres under $50,000 or so, those can usually go pending within 30 days.
Excellent. So what is your criteria for deals? You mentioned you really like the 5 acre lots. When you are pulling lists, what do you like to put in as far as criteria goes?
I shotgun everything pretty much. I'm 2 acres to maximum. I like those big. I said 5 acres because that's just a very common size that comes back to us. But in general, the bigger for me, the better, especially with subdivide plays and everything else. We just got a 140-acre property in Tennessee that we have listed right now. The bigger, the better for me. I'm a huge shotgun approach guy because I know how well this business model works. Anything vacant land in those markets that we're talking about is pretty much my criteria. The things that I stay away from are the smaller infill lots. That's not the game I really play. I stay away from those. We've done some, we've made money on them, but it's not what I target. It's not what I go after.
Got it. And so let's dive into your sales strategy a little bit in terms of acquisition. So are you sending neutral letters? Are you sending blind offers? What does that look like?
I'm a big blind offer guy. We tested, I'll have to look at the numbers. I think we tested 60,000 versus 60,000 last year in very similar markets, and the response rate was about the same. The different, like in terms of the number of people calling us, which I was really shocked about. The main difference I saw was the blind offers were much more motivated callers. And that's what I wanted to get to. The response rate is great if we could have got it up. That's what I thought the neutral letters is really going to bump the response rate up, but I just wasn't seeing that. We've tried ranged offers as well. That has something to it, I'm sure. I know a lot of people doing that, but I just like that. We have a pricing analyst who is just very good at pricing land, and he's our data analyst. He does a lot of other stuff too, but he's really good at pricing. If you get that good blind offer to them and it's targeted and it's that number you want, like I just 13 calls from a blind offer are better from my experience than 13 calls from a neutral letter. And that's why I like it. It's easier on the sales end too. You don't need to negotiate, call them back, comp the land. They have an offer. You hear their tone of voice, you hear how they react, and it's just a good starting point for the conversation.
Very cool. So you are sending purchase agreements or no? You're just driving them to the phone to call
No,
in?
I'm sending purchase agreements.
Excellent. And for someone that doesn't have a data analyst yet, and they're like, how do you price all of these properties? And we talked earlier about how so many people get caught up in the numbers and that they're just stricken with paralysis analysis.
Yeah.
How, or analysis paralysis rather, how do you go about doing that as a newer person, or you're doing this part-time? How do you price large batches of mail that way that your pricing is accurate?
Yeah, it's never going to be perfect. You want to be a really solid price for the average land. There's obviously going to be really good land in really good areas and really bad land in bad areas. And you're going to fall off on some, but you want to be right there in the middle. So you get those good properties back and you're in the ballpark. It's never going to be perfect. 70-80% accuracy with blind offers can take you a really far way. So don't try to perfect your pricing. Just try to get it so you're in the ballpark. I price personally where our average purchase right now is about 45% of market value. And that's what we like to price based off of. But the first thing I do when pricing, and it's something I'd recommend too, you just go to Zillow, go to realtor.com, look at the sold comps through an acreage range and start scrolling around from like a county view and first look if it's near a city. That's the very first thing I would do. Look at if it's near a city. If say Atlanta, Georgia's to the south of it and you're bordering Atlanta, Georgia, the south of that county is probably going to be more expensive. So you're probably going to cut your price in half, cut your county in half somewhere or split it up somehow. And that's what we'll do a lot of times. It's a very straightforward approach. We'll split counties in half. We'll split them in thirds. We'll split them vertically, horizontally. It's just a lot of times you don't need to split them. If counties are rural and there's no discrepancy in pricing and it's very consistent across the board, don't overanalyze it. Just price based. You got to price based off what the data you have. Unfortunately for land, we don't always have a lot of data to work with. So you have to work with the comps you have. You might have some comps 2 to 5 acres, 2 to 4 acres, right? Or 2, 3, and 4 acre comps, but you have nothing from that to 10 acres. But now 5, 6, 7, 8 are going to be sandwiched somewhere there in the middle. And then you just got to see and toggle around with it in your Excel and see what makes sense, because you're just going to run into situations with very little data, and that's okay. We get tons and tons of deals in those areas. You just want to work with the data you have, essentially.
That's really good advice. So let's dive into your sales process even more. So they call you off of your letter, whether they want to make a counter offer or they want to know more about the process. Talk to us. How does that work from converting those contacts from leads into actual contracts?
Yeah, so a few different ways this goes. One, they're ready to go and they send it in without ever calling you, and that still does happen. Two, they call in, they want to just build the trust, make sure you're trustworthy, they're interested, they're motivated, they're ready to go. They just have a few questions. Three, the most common ways they call in, they want to see if you're legit and the trust is there as well, but they also want to negotiate. That happens a ton as well. And then lastly, they call in and this happens a ton as well. And they're hate calls and they're yelling at you and yelling in your face. The most common, someone wants to call in and negotiate. A lot of times those people who want to negotiate, if you can hear it in their tone of voice, sometimes they want to sell it and just want a little win. You can give them a extra buck or two and give them their little win. It's all, you got to gauge their tone of voice on the phone and try to understand what they want and how motivated they are. Like, are they a motivated seller and is their land good? I am always the person who tries to get the purchase agreement as early as possible. Even if you aren't 100% certain the purchase is going to go through, like, your job as that salesman, put on your sales hat, get that purchase agreement. There is on our purchase agreement, there's a way out, and I would highly recommend structuring it that way. But get that a purchase agreement as soon as possible and with the least resistance, essentially, because the more time that goes by, the more likely you are to losing it. And that's my number one recommendation. Too many people try to do too much due diligence before getting the PA. Once you get the purchase agreement, great. My sales hat goes, I'm handing that purchase agreement to the due diligence person, and then I put my due diligence cap on. And that's when you can really pick the property apart, and it's your job too. But you got to have different hats. You're running a business yourself. You got to have different hats, and you can't let that due diligence person get in the back of that sales hat. They will hear you. They will feel the energy.
If you're enjoying this episode of the OnlyLandFans podcast, please let us know by subscribing and leaving a review. Now let's get back to the action. Yeah, that's a really good point. I see a lot of people prejudging deals before they even get on the phone with someone, and I've seen lots of people just kill the deals because they've done due diligence and they didn't even have that conversation with the seller. So that's a really good point. Can
Yeah,
you talk to us about your, do you have deposits? How does that work? What does that look like in terms of when you're actually locking up sellers on purchase agreements?
it depends. Usually no. And that's because I have a policy where we try to do everything very fast in this business. And if I say I'm going to close in 2 weeks, I am going to close in 2 weeks. The people who get mad, going back to your last point on canceling a
Yeah.
deal, the people who get mad are the people, or it's when you cancel the deal 3 weeks later and you're like, hey, I looked, it's in a wetlands. I can't buy this anymore. You can see that from day one. So get your sales cap on and then get your due diligence cap on right away and try to move that through. But in general, we do not put deposits down. If it's a really big deal, if it's a really good deal and we want to lock them in, absolutely, we will. On double closes as well. If you want to actually lock them in, we'll do those. We don't do as many double closes as actually buying the properties, but our thing is speed and we like to close it as soon as possible, lock it in, send it to title. We typically don't put any money down.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned the word motivation earlier. Can you tell us a few of the key indicators that you found when talking with sellers? What types of indicators do you look for when you're starting to gauge motivation? Obviously, the seller's not going to come out and say, I'm desperate, please take my land. So, can you
Right.
talk to us about what are some of the things that you have found that indicates a pretty good level of motivation?
You got to ask questions. The first thing is the price. They have a price. If are you interested in that price and hear their response. If they come and they're asking how much can you offer? I'm like, sir, do you have an offer on your table? Like we offered you $18,624. What do you think about that? And then you just listen. And that's what it's all about. Since blind offers, you have the luxury to have that offer in front of them before they call and they're calling you back with seeing that offer. So gauge their response when you ask them about that. If they say I need way more, try to get a number out of them. If you offered 18,000, they want 70 and you think you priced pretty well, might just not work out. But they have an offer in their hand and I would always leave it that way, but just gauging how they respond to that offer. And then sometimes someone got off the phone the other day and they had a killer deal and they didn't get the purchase agreement when they could have. And it was their offer was 40,000. The guy wanted 42 and it's like a sell for 100 or 105. And I was like, you cannot get off the phone without getting that purchase agreement. Like that's just like rule one in my book. Get that purchase agreement as soon as possible. You're too close. So always, if you're close enough, like you offer 20, they want 25. A lot of times they want to meet in the middle. And it's all just about hearing their reactions and feeling them out. It's never a bad thing to hold your ground if you think you can always go up. Going up's easy, right? But hold your ground, see how they react. If you offered 18,000 and they say they want 24, give them a couple reasons. Hey, we close this in 2 weeks. I'm paying for all the title fees. I'm paying for everything in this. I'm gonna do my best to be like make this as seamless as possible on you. I can't go up to 24. Or 22. I really wish I could, but I know we're close there. I hope you still consider it, but the 18,000 is my top number and see how they react. Sometimes they're like, all right, you got a deal. There's a little pause. That pause is scary. And then they tell you you got a deal. And you just got to feel them out. And it's just repetition. And you just got to get in the game and get as many reps as possible.
Yeah, that's really good advice. So, can you talk to us a little bit about your follow-up processes? How do you approach that, and what types of systems have you built around that?
We use Airtable as our CRM. They're a better CRM. Airtable's scalable, I think, and we've always run our business off of it, but there's tons of CRMs. Definitely do due diligence on those if you're deciding, but it's all based on motivation. Are they highly motivated? What's holding them back? Are they talking to their attorney next Friday? And you always want to speed up the process as much as possible. But follow-ups are for us all based on how they responded. And a lot of it's very custom. What are they waiting on? Do they need to talk to family members? Okay, let's get the time they're talking to family members so I can follow up and let's set a call for Friday with them. And that's how our high motivated people are. It's we need a targeted date that we're actually getting there. Everyone else who says, oh, I'll think about it in the future, or I'm not interested right now, whatever they'll go through, maybe we'll call them back in 6 months or send them through drip campaigns on text. Texting's great for that. Calling can get very time consuming with that type of stuff. I like to really cater to those highly motivated people because that can make your business. And then the people in the middle that maybe are motivated and you can get them over the top, or maybe you can offer a double close and get them more money and come up with a solution. Those people are where you can take that business to the next level. And those go in more of a strenuous follow-up process.
So what does that cadence look like for your texting follow-up? Is it just like an automated thing and then now they're in a drip campaign? What does that campaign cadence look like?
Yeah, it's all automated based on their level of there's 6 month low priority essentially. There's higher priority ones and there's monthly text. Every cadence is different for their motivation at that time. But the highly motivated people want, I don't even like to drip text them. I like, let's get them on the phone, manually text them if you need to. Make it personal. They don't need to go in any drip. Highly motivated people, keep out of the drips, start calling them yourself and get them on the phones.
Yeah, all about that speed. I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about the people that maybe aren't so highly motivated and you are putting them on an automated drip campaign, what texting platform do you like to use?
We use launch control. They were down for several weeks because of all the regulations and changes and stuff. That being said, that's why if you are texting, you always want to diversify your acquisitions at the top in some capacity. There's so many ways to your goal is to contact as many landowners as possible, right? Like contact as many targeted landowners as possible. And that's how you get leads. The method of doing it's going to change over time. There's people doing PPC, there's people doing email blasts, there's people cold calling, there's people leaving voicemails, all kinds of different stuff going on. And a qualified and motivated lead is a qualified and motivated leads. I don't really care where it comes from, but you have to diversify your top of funnel.
Very good. And let's talk about your dispo process a little bit. What are you doing to, once you get the property under contract, you close the property, what do you do then? Are you using realtors? Are you using Facebook Marketplace? There's a lot of dispo strategies out there. Can you talk to us about yours?
We've used realtors in the past, but we don't, for most of our deals, we do not. We list ourselves. Amy is one of our business operations managers. She's in charge of all the disposition. And we post it on land.com, their whole network, which is, we can talk about that because that's contested and a lot of people, it's expensive. And a lot of people have questions on that topic in general. So we post on land.com, Marketplace, Craigslist, and the MLS. We always use a flat rate broker. That is where we'll sell most of our properties on the MLS. And we just use flat rate brokers for listing there. And those are our sources. If you have it posted at the right price with proper marketing on those and you're catering to leads properly, you will sell properties fast.
Excellent. Now, let's say you get into the situation where, hey, this property is not moving as fast as we thought it should be. What are your troubleshooting steps for that?
Zillow saves. That's the Zillow saves and views is my number one thing. Go
Hmm.
on Zillow, see how it's moving, look, compare it to other properties there. But if the rule of thumb is having more saves than days on the market. But if you're listed 2 days and you have 25 saves and vacant land, that is very good. And that property most likely is going to sell based on our historical data, unless something's wrong with the property. But you're going to get a lot of leads at least. That's our number one thing. If there's not saves, maybe the market's just slower. I'll look at the market a little bit. There are times where it just takes time to sell land in certain markets. That's just the reality of it. And understanding that it might not be a price thing. It's just going to take the right buyer, whether I'm listed at 50,000 or 40,000. Sometimes it can take the same amount of time and it's just a small buying pool in that area. So troubleshooting, first thing I always look at is saves. I always look at the marketing. Also, if you're listing on a flat rate broker, you have to make sure you're posted on the right MLSs. Sometimes they'll post on the wrong MLS that's not good in that area. You want to get on the good MLS. There's multiple MLSs can overlap, and you want to make sure you're on the right one for that. So the people looking for that acreage range you're getting in their feeds. And that's something I always look at as well. And you can just see that on Zillow and see what MLS you're listed in, and then look at the other properties that have sold in that area and see what MLSs they're listed in.
That's really good. So when you are looking at the quality of the actual listing, can you talk about a few of the points that you look at?
In terms of the marketing, just pick good pictures. It needs to be appealing, having very straightforward, showing the road frontage. We have a drone sheet that I can share with you, and it tells you really all the shots that you need. You need some aerial shots. We always like it outlined, but showing the road frontage, showing some on ground in the woods or whatever it is, photos, street view. You got to think of what people are always asking about, and they want to see the road. Always have a road frontage type of picture and show the access. If it's a dirt road, show the dirt road. If there's an easement, show the easement. If there's an easement, also show the easement from the aerial, not only from the ground, but draw a little line. Just make it look really good. There's too many postings out there where screenshots and just not professional marketing. It's you want to get more views and eyes on this. You got to market properly.
Listen up, land fans. This is huge. We're bringing you the one and only Pace Morby, star of A&E's triple-digit flip and the mastermind behind $450 million in real estate deals. He's coming to our virtual meetup on Thursday, December 5th to share how he's applying his creative financing genius to land deals. Head to olfmeetup.com to save your spot today. That's olfmeetup.com. This is the kind of opportunity that changes everything.
Really good points. So can you talk to us a little bit about what are some of your main deal breakers, like when you're looking at deals in that due diligence period, or maybe even before? What are some of your main deal breakers?
Out of over 1,000 deals that we've done, we've lost money on one, and it was because of an access issue. So we are strict with access. They gave us access on title, and we only lost money because of the funding. We were in one of those 15% I was telling you about earlier, but access is the number one thing. Even if it has legal access, physical access doesn't always mean it's going to sell either. If the physical access isn't there, but it has legal access, what are you planning on doing to get people there? Because these people that are going to view your land are going to have to get out on their ATVs and not know where their easement access is and not know how to get back to the property. It complicates things. So access is definitely the number one thing. Obviously, price is big. Wetlands is big, but I'm all right with buying wetlands property if there's decent buildable spots. The access is the absolute deal killer to us. That is just what people need. You got to think. I always like to put myself in the buyer's shoes because I've bought land too, and I've thought about this before. And it's, what are they going to think when they don't have a road going to their property? How are they going to feel? They're just going to go to one of the 10, 20 other listings in the area. So I always like to look at it from that point of view. And then if you do decide to buy it, you better have the right price on it, because there is a price to these properties without physical access and legal access, but it's just, you got to get it for much, much cheaper. It's defected land, so buy it like it's defected land.
That's really good. So what would you consider to be some of the most important needle moving actions that a person brand new to the land space could possibly take on a daily basis?
It's real estate, so you make money in acquisition. So coming up with your acquisition strategies and sticking to a schedule is the biggest thing. Your leads are going to come in after that, which means your business can operate. If you don't have leads coming in, your business isn't going to be able to operate. So the first thing is, doesn't need to be a ton of mail. It doesn't need to be a ton of text. Whatever you decide to do, it just needs to be consistent. So you have consistent leads coming in. You can start getting consistent deals. That's the number one thing. Like, your business can't survive without leads. Sales and acquisitions is the most important thing to any business. It's sales. It's your top line, right? You got to start there. So my advice is just get a mail schedule together, build it out in Excel and stick to it. Get accountability partners. We have in our program at Land Investing Online, we put every single person in an accountability group because of the fact that we were doing it to a small group of people, and we saw that people in the accountability groups were doing much, much better. Sticking to an accountability group, going alongside it. They should all be other land investors and understand the business model to get you through the hard times. But you have a community, and also it's all about being alongside other people. Get an accountability group, hold yourself accountable, tell your partners, tell your significant others, whatever it is, and get on that schedule.
Definitely. That's really good. Yeah. Accountability is so huge. And I think there's a lot of negative connotation with the word accountability, but I find that it's also really important just to be able to like have someone see what you're doing and say, hey, like, you stuck to your mail schedule. That's a win.
Right.
Realize like how far you've come, because we lose sight of that often.
And
like
yeah.
how far we've come.
And then on the opposite side, like, you're going to go through struggles and I couldn't imagine, this business is lonely. There's not a lot of interactions you get. Like, you're dealing with your vacant landowners in Oklahoma that, that's the people you're talking to every day. If you're not around other land investors, it's just going to drain on you. Your chances of succeeding go way, way down. You got to get in a community and accountability group, something like that, to just hear other people go through it, help them through their struggles, and vice versa. They'll pick you up when you're down. Everyone's gone through the same stuff. It's not rocket science. The same things happen over and over again, to me, to you, to Dalton and here, to everyone else. And it's just the cycle of business. So just having people there to guide you through those times.
Yeah, that's so important. Especially, you mentioned earlier, you get one of 3 or 4 types of calls when you're sending out letters, and some of those are like angry, curse you out calls. Yeah. So having someone that you can just vent to and say, yeah, I've been there, I've done that. I've been on a string of, I haven't gotten anything for the last month, and the only calls that come in are like angry calls. It's good to have that support system. I completely agree.
Definitely.
Are you using AI in any way in your businesses right now?
A little bit, not a crazy amount. Descriptions, we've been using AI for a long time on property descriptions. We use Box Brownie, which is AI for enhancing property photos, Box Brownie. That is a nice software. I don't know if you've used it or not, but it's just an enhancer. It makes it makes the skies look blue and your pictures look really good. And it's
Ooh,
simple
nice.
and it's cheap. And then we built out a software, the landportal.com, and that uses AI we were sending too much mail. Essentially, we built it. We were sending too much mail to structures, houses, properties with structures on it, relying on county data, all that stuff. That's the other AI we use. Is just it cross-referenced USPS vacancy indicators along with satellite imagery, along with a bunch of other things, because relying on county provided data in these rural remote areas where these people don't even pick up the phone. I can imagine what kind of data they're taking on their county, or what records they're collecting. It's just something we didn't want to rely on.
Excellent. Now, you help lots of people in the land space get their land businesses started. What are some of the biggest struggles that you are seeing brand new people start that are in the business? What kind of struggles are you seeing those people have?
Sending out a mailer and not getting results, or sending out two mailers and not getting immediate results. That's always going to be the biggest thing, because you come in with so much energy, momentum, you're excited, and then that happens. That's the biggest thing. And it goes back to that mail acquisition rate and what that is. And everyone starts to analyze that number. That's the biggest thing, is getting through those bottoms, I think, at first. Also, there's a huge learning curve. Pricing mail is hard. Like, it really is. Pricing mail is not easy at first. It gets easier over time, but you have to understand, when you're doing anything for the first time, it's going to be the hardest it's ever going to be. So just getting the reps under it. The most successful people are the ones engaged in the community, reviewing other people's deals, getting reps, looking how other people are doing it. And not only does that provide accountability and proof of concept and all that, but you're also getting repetition, and you're hearing answers and questions, and those things will come up. But while you start to price, it's one thing studying pricing, but once you actually price once and then can watch a YouTube video on it, things just click a lot better. So just continue to take action. The biggest hurdle at first is people just not getting immediate results. And that's just one of those things. People come in and they want those get rich quick schemes and the marketing ads and everything else out there. That's what they want. And that's ideal if that can happen. But the truth is, it doesn't work out that way. So I think just getting through those bottoms at first.
That's a really good point. Now, if someone is looking to get started in this, but they don't have a ton of money, what would you suggest that they do in terms of what can they do to get started, move the needle without huge budgets?
Yeah. So obviously you don't need money for the deals. That's easy to get. The mail is very expensive. It depends how much money you have. So it's the cheapest way is cold calling yourself, picking up the phone and start to dial. We had a guy in our community, Deshaun. He was just joining our YouTube lives, and he was for a long time, and he was cold calling people. And I was rooting for him because he was there on every call and everything. I was like, I hope Deshaun, he got a deal, and he made, I don't remember, but he made a lot of money off his first deal from cold calling. Then he bought a program and accountability group and all this other stuff and got in it. But that's the cheapest way to get in, is cold calling, get some capital under you, get one deal. All you need is one deal. And then it will get easier from there, because all of a sudden, if you're averaging $25,000 of profit per deal, you get that from that one deal. Cold calling is the cheapest. It's definitely the grittiest and the grindiest, but you'll learn a lot about land, a lot about people, a lot about negotiation and business in general. So I recommend that. Texting is the route I would go if I was on a very low budget, though, because that's very affordable compared to mail. And you'll be able to qualify leads virtually instead of having to call them, essentially, which is just easier to do. And you can do it faster, and you can hire cheap virtual assistants to help you with that as well. And then once you save up some money, either combine all three of them or introduce direct mail with blind offers. Like, I love blind offers, but you got to have a little bit of capital to do it. That being said, those are those three strategies. The other strategy is to partner, family, friend, brother. I partnered with my brother. One of you might have more capital than the other. Pay it off later, figure something out between you two. If someone has $5,000-$10,000 for a couple direct mail campaigns, that's the route I would go.
Excellent. And where are you sourcing your data? Like, where are you pulling the list from and that type of thing?
We use the landportal.com. It's a software we built out. We recently launched it. We've been building it 14 months and put hundreds and hundreds of thousands. It's a legitimate software now, and it has high capabilities. We use the landportal.com to pull that. It is its own software with its own database, with its own systems and processes behind it. It's a really powerful tool. We were using DataTree before, but there are some bottlenecks with that we felt and that we wanted to address. So we ended up partnering with two of the main data collectors in the country and buying bulk data from them and storing them in Amazon services. It's updated daily. We have a team of 5 engineers on it. It's a good software, and it's a mapping software as well.
Ah, very cool. And does it have skip tracing capabilities, or what do you do for skip tracing?
It does have skip tracing capabilities. It does do bulk, but it also has one click. For those people who want to call their neighbors, you click one button, boom, the name and phone number come right up there on the property card. Like you
Love
see
it.
in ID.land with that little property card on the left, a little phone number and name will be stuck to that forever and it'll come up on the screen. You click it once. So we do that for one. If you want to call the neighbors and things like that's the easiest way to do it. If you want to bulk and do 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000, there's bulk as well. But that one click has been, there's nothing more that fires me up from people calling neighbors and getting deals from neighbors, or maybe their property, they got a road frontage property, right? But there's two properties behind them that have no access. The chances of you getting a property with no access, acquiring a property with, is much greater than of road access. So you can call them, get it for cheap because they know their property's landlocked. And those are the type of deals we're really pushing for right now. And it fires me up when people are using that button and cold calling. Like those deals are really cool to see.
Yeah, that's very cool. It sounds like a super powerful program for sure. Let me ask, what, in your opinion, is something that no one or very few people are talking about in the land industry that we should be talking about right now?
Really good question. The first thing is expand where you think the markets are. There are just too many states being untouched right now. And I really want people to diversify their marketing, get out of the Sun Belt for a little bit, get out of Texas, Oklahoma, go try some different states that you don't see a lot of people in. There are so many counties and areas out there. I mean, there's 3,300 counties, millions and millions of vacant parcels. You don't need to stay in one isolated area, try different things. I don't think that's preached about enough personally. And then two, when you get a property back, like I literally just said in your question before, if you have road access, look for the properties around you that connect to yours. And those are landlocked properties. You can buy and extend your acreage and you can buy them very cheap because they're landlocked. And that's where you can skip trace them. You can call them. One time I had to send a handwritten letter to Lexington, Kentucky. We bought a property in Shelby, Kentucky, and I had to send a handwritten letter to the person to get him to respond to me. And he ended up calling it back. I offered 30-40%, I think, of what it was worth, and it extended the property. It was landlocked at the time. We got a really good deal on it, but it took a handwritten letter. And I think that's not talked about enough either. Like you have a road frontage property sitting right here with 3 landlocked properties behind it. Let's try to acquire those.
Yeah, that's really good. That's fantastic. So, Daniel, what would you consider to be your superpower?
I think my vision in general, I am not good at any of the things I just really talked about. I'm not great at any of them, but I can put myself in a spot to where when starting a business, I can see where we're going before we're even going there and working backwards from that endpoint to where I want to be and forming a path there. I think that's what I've been really good at. I got horrible grades. I have never been good and I can't sit at my computer all day. I get really antsy and ADD. I'm not great at anything we talked about. I can't do it for long either, but my vision and putting things together is where I excel.
I love that. I love that. And what's your definition of success?
It's different for everyone. For me, it's about the freedom, creating freedom for myself and having the ability to do really what I want when I want it. And happiness for me is just having such a solid community around me. Like community is everything. I'm a huge fan of, I do jujitsu every day and martial arts and kickboxing. Like that community there, it just community, like success to me is having such a solid friend group, family group, and community around you. Because as life comes and goes with different events and hard times and good times, like that's your stability behind you. And I think that's the biggest thing for me.
I love that. That's really cool. And it's so important. And like we talked about earlier, just in any journey that you're in, having some type of community to support you is paramount. It's really important. Are there any types of entrepreneurs, business owners, authors that you like to read, follow, things like that?
I like a lot of them. Obviously, Alex Hormozy is a big fan of his. I think he gives some of the most value in the world out of any entrepreneur ever, just free value. And he's incentivized for it just from his business. So it makes sense. Dan Martell has been a big one with Buy Back Your Time lately. Simon Sinek with Start With Why. That was big for just because once you have the money, it's like, what do you have the money for? What do you want to do on this your one life that you have? So understanding what your purpose is was big, transformational point for me as well. But the biggest one who just gives free value is Dan Martell gives so much value through his emails, through his online presence, through his book. Same as Alex Hormozy. Like you cannot go wrong with either of those two.
Yeah, really solid. I follow those guys as well. Really good stuff. What's the biggest surprise you've had so far in your land journey?
Buying a landfill accidentally without knowing. It was in
No way.
Georgia. We had to work with the EPA to get it. Oh, it was a whole mess, but we bought it for really cheap and we had a good deal. I cut my offer price in half and the guy didn't hesitate at all. But that's probably because he knew it was an old landfill. So we bought it really cheap, got it insured. And then people are starting to call the county and they're saying the county's telling them that it's an old landfill. And I was like, how didn't I know about this? The county didn't tell me that when I did my due diligence. So we started looking into it and I was like telling the county to stop saying that because I had no proof that it was. I couldn't find anything. I ended up having to go to the EPA. I used a realtor on this one too. So he helped with the EPA. I had to go to the EPA, work through all the hoops there to get me connected with the right person who handles like landfills and all that stuff. And then eventually they were able, after talking to people for weeks and weeks, they were able to send down a little floppy disk with all the information from the 1980s landfill. So I had to dissect that and get all the data from there and then work with the local EPA guy. And I found out that the landfill wasn't on both of the properties. Luckily, it was two parcels. It was only on the one to the north and barely crossed into the one to the south. There were two 10-acre properties that were next to each other. We ended up doubling our money on it because of the price and we got it cleared, but it was a long, tedious process that I wouldn't want to go through for $25,000.
Wow. So biggest lesson learned there is check for landfills, apparently.
Check for landfills. Do better due diligence. How did I miss that one?
That's so good. If you could go back and tell yourself 3 pieces of advice when you were a newbie and just starting out in the industry, what would they be aside from check for landfills?
I think don't take things too seriously would be number one. There's nothing's that serious. We're buying and flipping land is not that serious. When you lose properties, things like that, don't get too bummed out. There's going to be a next one tomorrow. Number 2, I'd probably tell myself to give it 6 months because I was expecting to have immediate success, just like I was saying that the most common mistake is. So I think going in, just expecting less at first. That being said, after the first 6 months, things got to roll. And that's why I really highly suggest sticking to that number. Then lastly, get a mentor, follow someone. Don't do it alone. You cannot do it alone. At first, me and my brother it was him and I going back and forth and trying to figure things out. Whether it's a paid mentor, free mentor, like we talked about the accountability groups, surrounding yourself with people in the space is one of the most important things to your success.
So good. Yeah, fantastic. What's your biggest passion or goal you'd like to achieve at this point in your life?
Right now, my whole focus is on the software and building that up. It's a new mission. We spent $350,000 in a year building it. And it's a software that we spent so much time and passions behind, and I love it. And it's my baby. And I think just building that up right now to help as many land investors as possible is the goal of mine. Like my whole purpose is what's the path to someone getting a deal and how can we provide a solution to make that path easier, essentially. Like what's the path of least resistance? And that's what that software is about. It's combining multiple things into one. And it's ultimately to get you your deal or get you your freedom that you're looking for. And that's our company's mission, is create more freedom for people. And that's why we originally started Land Investing Online. So it's all about that freedom, whether you want to quit your job, that's the most common one. But some people want to retire their parents. Some people just want to make $50,000 and do a couple of deals and be a part of a community. Everyone's freedom's a little bit different, but this business can help you in some way. And having that unique goal and freedom set for yourself is really important.
I love that. Yeah, super powerful mission. I stand behind that 110%. This business can just open remarkable doors. Love that. I want to thank you so much for giving to us, Daniel. You've been so gracious with your time and with your knowledge. What resources or connections are you currently looking for that we can give back to you right now?
We're looking for more funding partners right now. So if anyone is interested in funding for those rates that we discussed, passive investors, no work needed really besides hop on some calls and we'll go over the properties, things like that. But if you're looking to invest and you want those returns that we talked about, 15 to 20% annual, we have deals for you. So we have plenty of deals coming in.
Excellent. And if someone wants to get in touch with you about doing that, how can they go about doing that?
You can email me, daniel@apkeland.com. It's APKE land.com. That's the best place to get me.
Excellent. We'll go ahead and put your email address in the show notes as well. Thank you so much, Daniel. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. Daniel, thanks so much. This has been an absolute pleasure. Wishing you all the very best on thelandportal.com and looking forward to checking out all of those incredible things that are coming down the pipe for you. So thank you for
thank you for having me. It was fun. And thanks for everyone for joining as well. This was a good time.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. Take care. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Bye. See you guys.
If you're interested in hearing from other seven-figure land flippers about how they've started and run their businesses, then join us at OnlyLandFans.com. Looking forward to seeing you there.